Burton K. Voorhees and Fred Dittman, two Army boys who were in Albuquerque together when Mary Johnson was bumped. Because of the bumping, Burton Voorhees held a ticket to get on Flight 3. Fred Dittman was sitting there saying, I would love to ride on one of those Sky Clubs, but I'm not going to get to go on because Carole Lombard wouldn't give up her seat. And Bert Voorhees said, you want to fly in a Sky Club? Here, take my ticket. And Fred was like, you're kidding. And he said, nah, I've been on those things. You go on, enjoy it, and I'll see you back in Long Beach. So Burton K. Voorhees had to go on and have survivor's guilt. He was at the gravesite when what was left of poor Fred Dittman was buried in Golden Gate Cemetery, and then went on and lived his life in the back of his mind, always remembering that he should have been on Flight 3, but he handed his ticket over and Fred Dittman died and he lived. So it's another one of those things. There aren't enough of those stories. The 22 people did die, but a couple of people who were supposed to be on the plane weren't and lived. Anybody else? Yeah.
I would like to know about your hike up the mountain and what you thought, and did you bring anything down? And yes, please.
That was a 12-hour adventure. It was the hardest thing physically I ever did, and my goal was I couldn't write anything in this book until I had experienced what the first responders experienced. That was part of the story. It's a big part of the story. Is these people on the ground in Vegas, mostly men. These were men, tough men. They see this plane fly into this cliff and they see it explode, and they don't know if anybody survived. Is there some way that did it crash land? Did people spill out? And then did it burst into flames? So they had to invent a way to get up one of the rugged mountains, the most rugged mountains in the western United States. There are no trails up there. There weren't then. There aren't now. There are no telephone poles. There are no power lines. There are no anything. It is a rugged mountainside. So a very experienced guide took Mary, my wife, and I up toward Potosi Peak, and Mary made it halfway up, and then it got rough. And we were climbing up boulders up this dry wash, and then he turned around to us after like 2 hours of just sheer torture and said, it's going to get rough now. And he encouraged Mary that maybe she should stay here. So she stayed in the freezing cold for 3 hours while we went on the final assault, got up to Potosi. And what did we find? You saw it there. There's wreckage all over the mountainside. And I knew that was there. I had seen photographs from other people's climbs. What I didn't realize I was going to experience was what it felt like to be where these people died. And Carole knew I was going up. She asked me to bring her something special. And I had no idea what that was, because there are all these artifacts on the ground. And as I was looking around for something special, and she was trying to explain to me, where I should look, under things going against boulders and odd places, and the pressure of finding something special at a crash.
Like a ring.
Yeah, wouldn't that be?
Oh yeah, that'll happen.
And as I was looking around, my guide comes over and says, I guess you don't want this to be something special, and it was a bone from somebody's hand. That's how rough this crash was, and what's still up there. 3 months after the crash, in the spring thaw, and it's in the book too. Nobody's known this before, but it was in the TWA confidential papers. They thought they had gotten everything off the mountain. 7 days of body recovery, analysis of the scene, photographs taken by the government. FBI goes over everything for evidence of sabotage. The body parts are, in some cases, so small that they're stuffing pieces of people into mail bags to bring them down. 3 months after the crash, the 2 feet of snow that's on the mountain thaws, and they find a human torso. At the scene, there are some mail employees that go up to collect airmail that was still missing. They were trying to find it. They found some. They also found a part of a body, and they found Wayne Williams, the captain of the plane. They found his jacket with his wallet in it. And rather than let that leak out to the press, they buried the body at the site. And they never let on that there was something of such significance as the pilot's papers and wallet found at the site, because all it did was prove how cursory the investigation was, because it was so hard to access the crash site in the first place. So there are human remains still up there, probably a lot. If you wanted to look for it, if you just wanted to go up there and look for remains, you could find remains. But it's also, it's such a sad place. As I'm sure every place is where there was a violent crime or a violent act or action that took somebody's life. And that hit me really hard while I was there. And I described how it felt. And I think it did sort of affect my writing about the site and about what the men experienced who did climb the mountain and had to recover those bodies and haul them out. Carole Lombard was given priority. She was the first body that was supposed to be taken out, and Petey was the second body that was supposed to be taken out because Clark was waiting down the mountain with Eddie Mannix and Howard Strickling, and they were going to take those bodies back to Hollywood. And then the other people were just the others, you know, the 20 others, which does them a great disservice. So that's what's up there. Both engines are up there, both landing gears are up there. Lots of pieces of aluminum. The very large parts of fuselage and wings were later taken out because pilots kept thinking that there was another plane down, because they would fly over this wreckage, and it continued to gleam silver because it's aluminum. And as you saw, it still looks great, but it became a menace to navigation. Plus, there's a story of how they tried to dynamite the scene to cover everything over so that looters wouldn't go up and try to find Carole Lombard's jewelry, which wasn't found. That was unsuccessful too. So the site was just sort of left by itself, and now if someone is determined to go up there, you can go up there. I would not recommend it, because there were 2 or 3 times when I almost died, because there's a shot of me climbing that my guide took looking back down. You don't realize when you're climbing hand over hand and that behind you is like a 2,000-foot drop. Oh. You know, and if you just take one wrong step, there you go. And my guide, it's so rugged up there that my guide had this GPS. I said, "What's this button?" He said, "If I push the button, a helicopter comes to rescue me." And that was really reassuring. Yeah. But, you know, kind of unsettling at the same time, because a helicopter might come and need and rescue you. Any other questions?
Well, it's such unforgiving territory. You can be standing straight up and it'll be this close to your face in some places. You know, you're just going straight up.
Yeah, and it's loose.
Yeah.
You're climbing, and you think you've got a nice steady rock, and the rock gives way because it's very loose on
It's like loose dirt, shale, pine needles, and a cactus that I sat on and killed. But yeah, it is totally unforgiving territory.
So you've made it up there yourself?
I got within about 90 feet of the crest. I went by the back way. He went the tough way. We drove part way up and parked at a staging area, and then we were going to go up the top and then drop into the site. But then, of course, you have to get yourself back out. So my legs gave out about 90 feet away from the crest, which is probably a good thing, because I don't know how I would have gotten out, because I didn't have the little button.
Oh my gosh.
You know. So
what are you going to bring back for her?
What did I send you? I don't remember.
some real cool stuff.
That would be.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't even know how to recognize what they are. I mean, they're plane parts.
Yeah, there's I remember
Some glass from the windscreen.
Right. Yes.
That was pretty cool.
Yes.
Wow.
And when you think of that windshield, that's what the pilots were looking through. And because I was just sort of out of my element, and I said to my guide, "What's all this glass?" He said, "Windshield." Oh, okay. And then there was some really thick glass that was the side passenger windows. There were some shards of TWA crockery up there. Mm-hmm. I know I sent you a piece that it had some rivets. It was 2 pieces of fuselage with some rivets in the middle, you know, something that was more interesting. But at the same time, I don't like taking things out of a crash site, because it's a crash. It's like hallowed ground.
Yeah.
And that was part of the pressure of